Welcome to today's video. I'm going to tell you why I've not got solar on my roof and why it's way more complicated than you may initially think. So if you're thinking of getting solar and you can't because you're not allowed, which I'll explain in a minute, or can't because you can't afford it, what are your options? Well, today's video I'm going to go through what your possible options may be. So there's actually a few possible reasons why you may not be allowed solar, and we're going to be going through them, and they sum up like this. They're either cost, aesthetics, or thirdly, it may be you're not allowed, which we'll get to in a minute. So firstly is cost. Now, let's look at what a 4 kilowatt array costs. A 4 kilowatt array here in the UK at least costs around about 5,400 quid. It's probably a bit flexible, some will pay a bit more, some will pay a bit less, but it just gives you a rough idea of what it will cost. Just because you've got a 4 kilowatt array doesn't necessarily mean you're going to generate 4 kilowatt hours of electricity per day. You may only generate 1 or 2 depending on the weather, how cloudy it is, what time of the year it is. It's really quite complicated, but if you export anything back to the grid, Octopus Energy, for example, on their normal go rate will pay you 5.5p per kilowatt hour. And if you're not an Octopus customer, by the way, link down below in the description, you get a £50 sign up bonus for signing up to Octopus. They do really inventive Octopus tariffs, and there's a list on my website going through which one may suit you the best, because there is several. Now here in the UK, if you are a new solar install, you no longer receive what we used to call the government feed-in tariff. This used to be money off the government for every kilowatt hour of electricity you generated, and earlier schemes were so generous they paid you for even the electricity you used yourself because they didn't meter it correctly in the same manners. Very complicated system. We then changed it again, and now it's basically disappeared. In fact, at one point in the UK, you actually have to pay the full 20% VAT on solar, and I believe this has now been sorted back to 5%. But again, another really complicated issue. But let's ignore that bit for a minute. Let's get right down to the nuts and bolts of what you can get paid at the moment. To generate solar, if you're feeding back to the grid, you will earn 5.5p per kilowatt hour. Now, I don't have a south-facing array, which means that I will generate significantly less than other people. And if you're interested to see how much you'll generate, I've left a website down below in the description, which is basically from the Energy Saving Trust, that will type your postcode in, you put the mark on your roof, which way your roof pitch is, and it will make an estimate of how much solar would cost, and it will also give you a price of what you'll generate per month. And if we look at my results, we can see very clearly that it's going to return me £240 a year, which means that even in 20 years, I'd have lost money. Now, this is based on the fact that we are not home until after 6 o'clock, so I won't be using any of the power I've generated during the day, and it will effectively being exported because we've not added a battery on there, because if we add a battery on there, we will have to add even more money to this, which we will get to in a minute for a battery. So go and do the costs on there and get back what you've got. I'd be interested to see, if you live in the south of England, what your returns are and what the cost of the solar panels are down there. Now, this isn't all about money. It's clearly not all about money, but money does help really nice things. Now, I'm going to make a loss. Could I make a better investment somewhere else in the green industry for that amount of money that will do more potential to the world and the way it works? Possibly, more than likely, I could invest that money a lot better and be a lot more green and sustainable than putting some solar on my roof and making me feel better. Now, like I said, I could add a battery, which would mean even more investment, as I could also use that battery to store the energy I generate. I could use that battery to then export the power during peak times and maybe balance the grid better. And to do that, I could then switch to Octopus Agile, so I'd be importing at higher rates, but I'd also be exporting at higher rates. So effectively, I could be paid for exporting lots of energy that I've generated during the day, effectively for free. But again, adding a battery would add significantly more cost to the install on top of the solar panels. Now, I could add a battery system to this, which I just mentioned before, which means I could charge up the battery from the solar, export it at night using maybe Octopus Go or at 5.5p, which would be silly, or use it in the house when I'm at home, which would make more sense. But let's say I had extra excess and I could just export it back to the grid, maybe using Octopus Agile, so paying more for my imports, but also being paid more for my exports. Maybe this might generate some extra revenue. But there is a possible better solution which we'll move to in a minute. So now we've got money out of the way, let's look at what we've got remaining. We've obviously got aesthetics, and we've also got you're not allowed. So moving on to aesthetics, I told my wife I was thinking of putting solar on the roof, and I basically got no. I don't like them, they're ugly, they look terrible, and annoyingly, she's right, I do have to agree, they don't look attractive on a house. They look awful, and we have a house that is easily seen by all our neighbours, and possibly all our neighbours may complain. The only other option there is the Tesla solar roof, which would cost even more money to install and has lower solar gains. However, in the past, I've ignored my wife for green reasons and done basically what I wanted to improve the benefits of myself greenly, and also the future of any children we may have in the future. So that's not the main reason holding me back. The third reason is I live in a leasehold house. Now, very quickly to explain this, I own my home 100% outright, but it has a 999-year lease on it. I pay a silly ground rent of about 300 quid a year for that, and I get absolutely zero benefits. It was just the way a builder could make more money out of me, not explaining a product properly when I bought the house, and basically pulling the wool over my eyes and giving me all these facts that, according to investors, I shouldn't bother buying it out and blah, blah, blah. We'll get into that maybe another day on mis-selling. But basically, the lease has some covenants in it, and the covenants say I can't do a load of things like put a sky dish at the front of the main road. It has to be hidden. And one of the other things in there, by the way, this lease is my house. I only bought my house 4 years ago, and 4 years is how old the lease is. In this lease, it says that I can't add solar panels. Now, first of all, I think this should be outlawed. It should be illegal. The fact that at the moment, house builders are selling houses with covenants in them that restrict house owners from putting solar on their house during a climate emergency is just plain wrong. It is wrong. If you are a builder and you are putting covenants in your contracts to stop people from being green and putting solar panels on their roof, you are just trying to make money out of people. Because guess what? I can buy the lease off them and take the covenants out, but they want extra money for taking even the covenants out, even though I'd own the lease. So it is just a money-making scam. I've basically been scammed into buying a house and then paying more money for a house that I don't technically own the rights to do anything to because I'm not allowed. What can I do? I want solar. I average about 13 kilowatt hours of electricity a day, so a small, manageable amount, easy to do with a battery and solar, or easy to do with a bit of solar and maybe importing a little bit every now and again. And by the way, that includes charging my car. I am very proud of how little electricity we use in this home. I also want to help balance the grid. Now, one option is what we discussed with Sarah Merrick, who me and EV News interviewed, which was about Ripple Energy, where you can invest in a wind turbine, and that in reduction, you're building a turbine, they'll deduct that off your bill. And that is one option to me. That is one option that is definitely open to me. If you're interested in joining Ripple, there is a link down below for a referral where you'll get a small contribution to that new wind turbine they're looking to build. The first one's already completely sold out, but they are looking to build a second turbine. So if you want to be part of that cooperative project, firstly check out the interview I did with Martin, and then maybe check out Ripple. But they're a really, really inventive company, and that is one option. However, the option that I think may be better would be a very low carbon footprint, helping to balance the grid, maybe a home storage battery alone. So just a battery, no solar. Well, at the moment, the cheapest battery that I can find for the best bang for your buck, so that's a Tesla battery, has one of the best capacities, highest capacities, also has one of the best reliabilities, and also the highest peak output, would set me back at the moment about 9 grand. And I just physically don't have 9 grand. And also, again, payback, even with Octopus Agile, exporting and importing, the chance of making that 9 grand back over 20 years, I could probably invest that money somewhere else and be greener. Why will I not go for some of the Chinese batteries or some of the other batteries I've seen? Well, to be honest, the peak output on them is quite bad on some of them. The way some of them are built, makes me feel that I'm not being green. I'm just exacerbating the issue, making it worse, importing a battery from China that I don't know the ethical sources of where it's come from. Probably isn't the best idea for someone like myself. Also, I'm worried about some of these random battery firms that are just peering from everywhere and not really looking at what they can do. There is some options coming. There's basically some batteries I know about that are coming to market soon, and I will probably re-review my decision when these come out. But if you are thinking at the moment of installing solar, I'd say at the moment I'd probably definitely put a battery in at the same time. If you live at home, work from home, and you're in all day, then it probably won't matter to you as much as me. Your calculations and returns will be a lot better. I personally think the government should bring back a feed-in tariff, 2 feed-in tariffs, one for people who've just got solar, one for people who've just got a battery, and one for people who've got both. And there should be a feed-in tariff to incentivise people to do this, because at the moment we are looking at higher electricity prices. We're looking at building a nuclear power plant with a really high strike price. This money could surely be spent on better areas like new wind turbines, solar farms, battery storage, people with feed-in tariffs, balancing the grid and microgeneration. This is what we should be looking at. What do you think? Leave a comment down below, let me know. Thank you very, very much for watching this week's video, and I'll see you again next week. Goodbye.